The lie was as dazzling as the crystal chandeliers hanging in the grand ballroom of the Astoria. On the most important night of the city's social calendar, billionaire industrialist Marcus Davin stood on stage, a proud arm around a stunning young woman. He called her his partner, his inspiration, the future. The applause was thunderous. But in a city built on secrets, the most devastating truths don't send a warning. They simply walk in. And as the ballroom doors swung open, the real Mrs. Davin entered, not with tears in her eyes, but with the city's most feared litigator by her side. The applause faltered. Champagne glasses froze midway to lips, and a story of quiet betrayal was about to become a very public execution. Isabelle Davin believed their life was a masterpiece of careful construction. Their 15-year marriage was a fortress built brick by brick, with shared ambition, mutual respect, and the quiet understanding that their union was a powerful partnership. Their penthouse on Park Avenue wasn't just a home. It was a testament to their joint success. Its panoramic windows overlooking a city they had in many ways conquered together. Marcus was the face of Davin Industries, the charismatic innovator who charmed boardrooms and financial journalists. But Isabelle was the architect. She was the one who had guided his raw ambition, smoothed his rough edges, and curated their social circle with the precision of a master jeweler, selecting perfect gems. She hosted the dinners that sealed the deals. She remembered the names of investors' children. She was the silent, steady hand on the tiller of their shared empire. The first crack in the fortress was almost imperceptible. A stray scent of a perfume that wasn't hers on his suit jacket, not the fleeting fragrance of a passing colleague, but something that lingered intimate and cloying. He'd laughed it off. "You know how it is at these press events, darling. Everyone wants a hug." Then came the late nights attributed to supply chain crises in Asia that required calls at 3 a.m. The phone once left carelessly on the nightstand was now perpetually screened down or in his pocket. He became defensive about his schedule, his explanations for weekend trips becoming just a little too detailed, a little too polished. Isabelle was not a fool. She was a woman who could read a balance sheet and spot a discrepancy of $1 in a multi-million-dollar budget. She could certainly read the signs of a man hiding something. The pain was a cold, sharp thing in her chest. But she refused to let it consume her. Hysteria was a currency she did not trade in. Instead, she did what she always did. When faced with a problem, she gathered data. She started small. A casual mention of a restaurant he claimed to have had a business dinner at, only to see a flicker of confusion in his eyes before he recovered. "Oh, was it Tuesday? I meant Wednesday. The days are blurring together." She checked their joint credit card statements. There were charges at boutique hotels. She'd never heard of florists in neighborhoods they never frequented, and a recurring charge for a high-end spa package, a gift for his sister, he claimed, though his sister lived in London and loathed spas. The data points formed a constellation of deceit. The final confirmation came not from a statement, but from a photograph. A friend vacationing in the Caribbean sent her a breezy text, "Isn't this Marcus' small world?" Attached was a blurry photo of a man with Marcus's distinctive silver-streaked hair, his arm draped possessively around a young raven-haired woman on the beach. They were laughing their heads close together. The woman was Sienna Hayes, a junior marketing executive at Davin Industries, whom Isabelle had met briefly at a company Christmas party. She was ambitious, beautiful, and 2 decades younger than Marcus. The sight of it didn't break Isabelle. It galvanized her. The pain was still there, a low, humming frequency beneath her skin, but it was now overlaid with a cold, clear rage. This wasn't just an affair. This was a flagrant betrayal, a dismantling of the fortress she had helped build. Marcus wasn't just cheating on her. He was making a mockery of their entire life together. She didn't confront him. An emotional confrontation would give him the advantage, allow him to gaslight her, to twist the narrative until she was the hysterical, paranoid wife. No, this required a different kind of warfare. This required a strategist. She made a call, not to a friend, not to her mother, but to a name she had kept in her private contacts for years, a contingency plan for a disaster she had prayed would never strike. Arthur Finch, please. Arthur Finch was a legend in New York's legal circles. He was old school, a man who wore perfectly tailored three-piece suits and spoke in measured, devastatingly precise sentences. He didn't handle messy, emotional divorces. He handled dissolutions of dynasties. He was the man you called when a partnership worth billions was on the line, and you needed to walk away with not just your share, but your dignity intact. Their first meeting was in his wood-paneled office overlooking the East River. Isabelle laid out her suspicions calmly and methodically, presenting the credit card statements and the photograph as if they were exhibits in a corporate takeover bid. She did not cry. Her voice did not shake. Finch listened, his steepled fingers resting on his chin, his gaze sharp and assessing. He'd seen countless betrayed spouses, but there was a steely resolve in Isabelle Davin that was rare. "Infidelity is the simplest part of this Mrs. Davin," he said when she finished. "It's a symptom, not the disease. A man this reckless with his personal life is often reckless with his finances. He believes he is invincible. He believes the assets are his, not ours." He paused. "I recommend we engage a forensic accounting team. Quietly. Let's see what else he's been partnering in." Over the next 3 weeks, a ghost team guided by Finch delved into the labyrinth of Davin Industries' finances and Marcus and Isabelle's joint holdings. What they began to uncover was far worse than a simple affair. Marcus wasn't just spending marital money on his mistress, he was moving it. Large sums were being siphoned from joint accounts into newly created shell corporations with opaque names like Apex Global Holdings and Viridian Solutions. He was systematically undervaluing company assets in preparation for a restructuring, a move that would shield the company's true worth during a potential divorce settlement. He was in essence trying to steal their shared future from under her nose. The centerpiece of his hubris was the upcoming St. Jude's Children's Foundation Gala. Marcus was the event chair this year. It was the pinnacle of the social season, a night where the city's elite gathered to display their wealth and philanthropy. He had been planning it for months, obsessed with every detail. Isabelle now understood why. It wasn't about charity. It was to be his coronation, the night he would publicly transition from his old life to his new one. A week before the gala, Finch called Isabelle. "We have it," he said, his voice grim. "The paper trail is undeniable. He's been setting up Miss Hayes in a company-funded apartment, has her on a shadow payroll, and the Apex Global account was used to purchase a significant portfolio of unregistered bonds. He's not just preparing for a divorce, Mrs. Davin. This borders on criminal fraud." A plan began to form in Isabelle's mind, cold and brilliant. Marcus wanted a public stage for his new life. She would give him one. "Mr. Finch," she said, her voice devoid of any tremor. "The St. Jude's Gala is on Saturday. I assume my ticket as Mrs. Davin is still valid." "Of course," he replied, confused. "But are you sure you want to?" "I am," she interrupted, "and I would like you to be my escort." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, then a slow, deep chuckle. Arthur Finch, a man not given to overt displays of emotion, sounded almost impassed. "It would be my distinct honor, Mrs. Davin. I shall have the necessary documents prepared and brought with me. A simple divorce petition seems inadequate under the circumstances. I'll bring the works." Isabelle hung up the phone and walked over to her closet. She pushed past the rows of classic, elegant gowns she had always worn to compliment Marcus. At the very back, in a protective garment bag, was a dress she had bought on a whim, but never dared to wear. It was a stunning creation of crimson silk that was both breathtakingly elegant and utterly defiant. It was not the dress of a supportive wife. It was the dress of a woman coming to claim what was hers. The grand ballroom of the Astoria was a symphony of excess. The air hummed with the murmur of 1,000 conversations, punctuated by the clinking of champagne flutes and the soft strains of a string quartet. Light from a dozen crystal chandeliers, each the size of a small car, fractured and danced across diamond necklaces and silk lapels. This was the beating heart of New York's old and new money, a room where fortunes were burnished and reputations were made or broken. At the center of it all, like a king holding court, was Marcus Davin. He stood near the main stage, a vision of tailored success in his Tom Ford tuxedo. But it wasn't his suit that drew every eye in the room. It was the woman on his arm. Sienna Hayes was radiant, poured into a silver sequined gown that caught the light with her every breath. Her raven hair was styled in glamorous waves. Her smile was wood and confident. She clung to Marcus's arm not as a guest, but as a hostess, a partner. The whispers started immediately spreading through the crowd like a virus. "Is that Sienna Hayes from his marketing department?" A banking heiress murmured to her husband. "Where is Isabelle? I heard they've been having trouble." The husband replied, his eyes narrowing. "But this is a declaration of war." "She looks barely old enough to be his daughter," sniped a society columnist, discreetly typing notes into her phone under the table. "Davin's midlife crisis is apparently being sponsored by Cartier." Marcus was oblivious, or perhaps he simply didn't care. He was high on the audacity of his own actions. For months, he had felt suffocated by Isabelle's quiet competence, her unspoken judgment of his increasingly risky business ventures. He craved the uncritical adoration Sienna gave him. She didn't question his decisions. She applauded them. She didn't see him as a partner to be managed. She saw him as a titan to be worshipped. In her eyes, he was invincible, and tonight he was determined to show the world that same vision of himself. He greeted Harrison Blackwood, a grizzled, powerful investor whose firm held a 30% stake in Davin Industries. Blackwood was a man who valued stability above all else. "Marcus," Blackwood grunted, his eyes flicking to Sienna. "Good to see you. And this is Harrison." "I'd like you to meet Sienna Hayes," Marcus announced, his voice booming with pride. "Sienna is my partner, an incredible force in my life and a rising star at the company." The word partner hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. It was not my guest or my friend. It was a public replacement. Sienna beamed, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "Mr. Blackwood, it's an honor. I've heard so much about you." Blackwood gave a curt nod, his expression unreadable but cool. "Mrs. Davin not joining you this evening?" He asked, his tone casual, but the question pointed. Isabelle is indisposed, Marcus said with a dismissive wave of his hand. It was a weak lie, and he knew it, but he was committed now. The momentum of the night was carrying him forward. He led Sienna through the room, a conquering hero showing off his prize. He introduced her to councilmen, to philanthropists, to the very people whose foundations Isabelle had so carefully cultivated for years. With each introduction, his confidence swelled. He was rewriting his own story in real time, erasing 15 years of marriage with a smile and a handshake. Sienna, for her part, played the role flawlessly. She was charming, attentive, and laughed at all his jokes. She believed this was her arrival, the moment she transitioned from a secret affair to the rightful queen. The culmination of his arrogance was the opening speech. As the event chair, it was his duty to welcome the guests and kick off the fundraiser. He strode onto the stage, Sienna watching from a front-row table he had reserved for them. The spotlight found him, and a hush fell over the ballroom. "Welcome, friends, colleagues, leaders of this great city," he began, his voice resonating with practiced charisma. "We are here tonight for a noble cause to support the miracles performed every day at St. Jude's, a cause that reminds us that our future lies in our children." He paused for effect, his eyes scanning the adoring faces. But tonight is also about another kind of future. It's about vision, about passion, about finding that spark that reignites your soul. His gaze drifted toward Sienna's table. True partnership isn't just about history. It's about a shared vision for tomorrow. It's about finding an inspiration that pushes you to be bolder, to reach higher. He raised his glass. "So I want to propose a toast, not just to the children of St. Jude's, but to new beginnings, to passion, and to the partners who inspire us to build a better future." The room erupted in applause, though some of it was hesitant, confused. The old guard, the friends of Isabelle, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They knew Isabelle Davin. They knew she was not a woman to be indisposed. Something was deeply wrong. Harrison Blackwood, sitting at his table, did not applaud. He simply watched Marcus, his expression hardening into one of deep concern. He was a man who hated instability, and Marcus Davin was currently bathing in it on a public stage. Marcus took in the applause, a triumphant smile plastered on his face. He felt powerful, untouchable. He had done it. He had presented his new life to the world, and the world had accepted it. He stepped down from the stage, his chest puffed with pride, and walked back toward Sienna, ready to accept her congratulations. It was in that precise moment of supreme self-satisfaction that the grand oak doors at the far end of the ballroom swung open. They didn't open tentatively. They were pushed open with authority, revealing two figures silhouetted against the light of the outer hall. The noise in the ballroom did not stop at once. It died a slow, rolling death, starting from the tables nearest the door and spreading like a shock wave. Conversations trailed off mid-sentence. Laughter caught in throats. Champagne glasses froze in the air. The string quartet faltered, one violin squeaking into the sudden cavernous silence. Every head in the room turned toward the entrance. And there, standing in the doorway, was the woman who was supposedly indisposed. Isabelle Davin did not look like a woman scorned. She looked like a queen arriving to reclaim her throne. She paused in the doorway, allowing the room to absorb the full impact of her presence. The crimson silk of her gown was a slash of defiance against the muted palette of the room's golds and creams. The dress was a masterpiece of tailoring, elegant, but with a daring cut that spoke of newfound liberation. Her hair was swept up in a severe, graceful chignon, showcasing the diamonds at her ears, the first gift Marcus had ever given her, a symbol of the beginnings he was so eager to toast. Her face was a mask of serene composure, but her eyes, dark and focused, swept across the room with an intensity that made people physically recoil. Beside her stood Arthur Finch. He was a stark, imposing figure in his dark, impeccably tailored suit. He carried a fine leather briefcase, holding it not like an accessory, but like a weapon. His silver hair was neatly combed, and his posture was ramrod straight. He was the personification of sober, expensive consequence, and his presence next to Isabelle transformed her arrival from a mere social disruption into a declaration of intent. The silence in the ballroom was now absolute, thick and heavy. The only sound was the faint, distant hum of the city outside. As Isabelle and Finch began to walk forward, a path cleared before them, as if by an invisible force. People didn't just move aside. They leaned away, pulling in their chairs, a collective, physical act of disassociation from the impending collision. Marcus stood frozen by the stage, his triumphant smile melting into a mask of disbelief. His mind struggled to process what he was seeing. This was not the Isabelle he knew. The Isabelle he knew would have called him screaming. She would have made a scene in the privacy of their home. She would have dissolved into tears. She would never, ever engage in a public confrontation. This cold, regal, avenging figure was a stranger to him. His gaze flickered to Sienna. The color had drained from her face. The confident smile she had worn all night had vanished, replaced by a wild-eyed panic. Her hand, which had been resting on Marcus's arm, slipped away. She suddenly looked exactly what she was, a young woman in a borrowed gown, catastrophically out of her depth. The fantasy of the evening had just collided with a brutal reality. Isabelle's walk was not a walk. It was a procession. Her heels clicked with a steady metronomic rhythm on the polished marble floor, each click an indictment. She didn't look at the whispering guests or the gawking faces. Her eyes were locked on one target, her husband. As she drew closer, the details of her transformation became more apparent. She was wearing the Davon diamonds, a legendary necklace of staggering value that was a family heirloom, reserved only for the most significant occasions. Wearing it tonight was a power play of breathtaking audacity. It was a physical reminder to everyone in the room, especially Marcus, of the legacy and the dynasty he was attempting to discard. Marcus finally found his voice, a strangled whisper. "Isabelle, what are you doing here? I thought you were unwell." Isabelle didn't break her stride. She and Finch continued their slow, deliberate advance until they stood directly in front of Marcus and Sienna. The four of them formed a small, silent tableau in the center of the vast room, the unwilling focus of hundreds of pairs of eyes. The air crackled with tension. This was no longer just gossip. This was a spectacle. Isabelle finally stopped standing so close to Marcus that he could see the icy fire in her eyes. She looked from his stunned face to the terrified one of Sienna Hayes. She offered Sienna a small, pitying smile that was more terrifying than any expression of rage. Then she turned her gaze back to her husband. Her voice when she spoke was not loud, but it was so clear and cold that it carried through the silent ballroom as if amplified. "Unwell," Isabelle said, a single, perfectly sculpted eyebrow raised. "On the contrary, Marcus, I have never felt better. I've just been finalizing some new arrangements." She glanced at Arthur Finch, who gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. The moment had arrived. The carefully constructed world of Marcus Davon, built on a foundation of lies and arrogance, was about to be publicly and systematically demolished. The ballroom held its collective breath. The confrontation had moved beyond the realm of domestic dispute. It felt like a formal duel with Isabelle and Finch as the challengers. Marcus, recovering a sliver of his blustering bravado, tried to seize control. "Isabelle, this is neither the time nor the place," he hissed, his voice low and furious. He gestured vaguely at the sea of onlookers. "You're making a scene." "A scene?" Isabelle's laugh was a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. "You were just on that stage, Marcus, toasting to new beginnings with your partner. I believe you're the one who set the stage. I'm merely playing my part." Her gaze flickered contemptuously toward Sienna, who flinched as if struck. "And you," Isabelle said, her voice dropping to a tone of chilling dismissal, "are clearly out of your league." Sienna paled, looking to Marcus for defense, but he was too consumed by the disaster unfolding to offer any. He was a cornered animal, his eyes darting between his wife and his lawyer, searching for an escape that didn't exist. "Now is not the time for this," he repeated, trying to project an authority he no longer possessed. "We'll discuss this at home." "There is no at home anymore, Marcus," Isabelle stated flatly, "and we won't be discussing this. Mr. Finch will be handling all our future correspondence." At this cue, Arthur Finch stepped forward. With a deliberate, unhurried motion, he placed his leather briefcase on a nearby empty table. The clicks of the latches opening sounded like gunshots in the silent room. He withdrew a single thick envelope made of heavy cream-colored vellum. It was pristinely white official and radiated an aura of immense legal gravity. "Marcus Davin," Finch said, his voice the calm, resonant baritone of a man who has delivered bad news for a living and learned to enjoy it. He held the envelope out. "On behalf of my client, Isabelle Davin, I am serving you with this petition for the dissolution of your marriage." A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. This was it, the point of no return. Marcus stared at the envelope as if it were a venomous snake. "You can't be serious," he stammered, looking at Isabelle. 15 years. You're throwing away 15 years over a misunderstanding, Tom. A misunderstanding. Isabelle's voice was laced with disbelief. "You call systematic deception a misunderstanding. You call her," she gestured again at Sienna, "a misunderstanding? No, Marcus. This is a clarification." Finch extended the envelope further. "Mr. Davin, I advise you to take the document." Marcus's hands remained at his sides, clenched into fists. He was trapped. To take the envelope was to admit defeat. To refuse it was to look weak and petulant. The entire social and financial elite of New York was watching him, their faces a mixture of pity, morbid curiosity, and schadenfreude. From his table, Harrison Blackwood watched the scene with an expression of pure fury. This public implosion was precisely the kind of instability he abhorred. A man who couldn't manage his own marriage certainly couldn't be trusted to manage a billion-dollar corporation. Seeing Marcus hesitate, Finch took another step forward, and with a finality that brooked no argument, placed the envelope squarely in the breast pocket of Marcus's tuxedo. He didn't shove it. He placed it with the cool precision of a mortician. It was a violation, an act of legal and social dominance that left Marcus looking utterly powerless. "That is a petition for divorce on the grounds of adultery," Finch continued, his voice calm and clear for all to hear. "It includes a temporary restraining order, preventing you from accessing, transferring, or liquidating any and all marital assets effective immediately. Every joint account has been frozen as of 1 hour ago. An emergency injunction was granted by Judge Miller this afternoon. The color drained from Marcus's face. Frozen. All of them. He had millions moving deals pending. This was more than an embarrassment. This was a financial garrote. "You can't do that," he sputtered. "Oh, it's already been done," Finch replied smoothly. He then turned his cool gaze to Sienna Hayes, who looked as if she was about to faint. "And Miss Hayes," Finch said, his tone turning to ice, "a word of advice. The apartment you currently reside in at the Olympic Tower is a corporate asset funded through an account now under legal scrutiny. The vehicle you are driving is registered to the Davin Marital Trust. The credit card you used this afternoon at Bergdorf's has been cancelled. I would suggest you make alternative arrangements immediately." Sienna's mouth opened and closed silently. The foundation of her new glamorous life had just been vaporized in a single paragraph. The silver gown suddenly felt like a costume for a play that had just been cancelled. But Finch wasn't finished. The divorce petition was only the opening salvo. He reached back into his briefcase. "That Mr. Davin," Arthur Finch said, pulling out a second, even thicker document, "is the civil matter. This is something more pressing." The air in the ballroom grew colder, the silence more profound. If the first envelope was a declaration of war, the second one, held aloft by Arthur Finch, felt like a notice of execution. It was bound not in a simple envelope, but in a heavy, dark blue legal binder. Marcus stared at the binder, a primal fear beginning to eclipse his anger and humiliation. This went beyond divorce. The mention of frozen accounts was a warning shot, but the presence of this second, more formidable document signaled a catastrophe of a different magnitude. "What is that?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. This, Finch announced, his voice carrying with deliberate clarity, is a copy of a report that was delivered via courier to the office of the District Attorney for New York County and to the Enforcement Division of the Securities and Exchange Commission approximately 90 minutes ago. A wave of shock rippled through the onlookers. The District Attorney. The SEC. These were not terms one heard in a marital dispute. This was the language of corporate malfeasance, of criminal investigation. The drama had escalated from a juicy society scandal to a potential white-collar crime thriller. Harrison Blackwood, the major investor, leaned forward in his chair, his face a grim mask. His investment wasn't just in Davin Industries. It was in the perceived integrity of its leader. That integrity was now being shredded live on the ballroom floor. Isabelle stood by a silent, powerful observer. She had known this was coming. She had reviewed the forensic accountant's report with Finch page by damning page. She had seen the web of deceit Marcus had woven, not just around her, but around their entire financial existence. Her initial pain had curdled into a resolve as hard as steel. He hadn't just betrayed her heart. He had tried to steal her legacy. Finch tapped the blue binder. "This report details a pattern of financial misconduct, Mr. Davin. It outlines the systematic siphoning of funds from marital accounts and, more significantly, from corporate coffers into unauthorized, unaudited shell corporations." Finch paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. He then delivered the killing blow, naming the ghost entity they had uncovered. Specifically, into a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands under the name Apex Global Holdings, a company whose sole director, Finch's eyes bored into Marcus, is you and whose primary beneficiary appears to be a Miss Sienna Hayes. At the mention of her name in connection with a Cayman Islands shell company, Sienna let out a small, strangled gasp. Her involvement had just been upgraded from adulteress to potential co-conspirator. The dream of a life of luxury with a powerful man curdled into a nightmare of depositions and legal fees. She looked at Marcus with terror-filled eyes, but he wasn't looking at her. He was staring at Finch, his face ashen. He was exposed utterly and completely. The report details several fraudulent wire transfers. Finch continued, his tone relentless. Including a sum of $5 million transferred just last week to purchase unregistered bearer bonds, a classic instrument of money laundering. It also details the deliberate undervaluing of company assets ahead of a planned private sale of a key subsidiary, a sale from which the profits would have been diverted to Apex Global defrauding your shareholders. At the phrase defrauding your shareholders, Harrison Blackwood pushed his chair back with a loud scrape that echoed in the funereal silence. He rose to his full imposing height. His face was thunderous. The man he had entrusted with hundreds of millions of dollars was being accused with damning specificity of orchestrating a massive fraud. "Marcus!" Blackwood's voice was a low roar that cut through the tension. Every eye in the room swiveled to him. "Is this true?" Marcus couldn't speak. He was drowning. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His carefully constructed world of power and influence was collapsing around him in real time. Finch didn't give him a chance to formulate a lie. "The evidence is comprehensive, Mr. Blackwood. Wire transfer confirmations, incorporation documents from the Cayman's emails from Mr. Daven's personal server instructing his offshore agent. It's all in the report." Blackwood looked from Finch's unyielding face to Marcus's crumbling one. He didn't need any more confirmation. He had seen enough corporate implosions to recognize one in the making. He pointed a thick finger at Marcus. "You're finished, Daven. Consider my firm's confidence withdrawn. My lawyers will be in touch with the board first thing Monday morning. We're calling for an immediate independent audit and your immediate suspension as CEO." It was a public execution. In the space of 5 minutes, Marcus Daven had gone from being the chairman of the Gala to a social pariah, a soon-to-be ex-husband, and a suspended CEO facing federal investigation. The edifice of his life had not just cracked, it had been dynamited. And holding the detonator was his wife, the quiet, competent architect he had so fatally underestimated. The fallout was instantaneous and brutal. Harrison Blackwood's denouncement acted as a final definitive judgment. The quiet whispers in the room erupted into a low, excited roar. Cell phones previously held discreetly were now raised openly, recording the corporate titan's spectacular fall from grace. The story was no longer just a rumor. It was a verified, unfolding news event. Sienna Hayes, finally grasping the totality of her ruin, did the only thing she could. She turned and fled. Clutching the skirt of her now tawdry silver gown, she pushed her way through the stunned crowd, her face a mess of tears and running mascara. She didn't look back. Her fairy tale had ended, and she was running from the wreckage before she was formally named as a defendant. Marcus stood alone, a solitary, pathetic figure in the center of the room. The thick divorce petition was still visible in his tuxedo pocket, a white flag of surrender. The specter of the blue binder and the SEC investigation hung over him like a shroud. His eyes, wide with panic, scanned the room, looking for a friendly face and ally, but found only condemnation, pity, and the hungry gleam of gossip. He was utterly, publicly alone. Isabelle watched him for a moment longer, her expression unreadable. There was no triumph in her eyes, only a profound, weary finality. This was the man she had loved, the man she had built a life with. Seeing him so completely broken was a grim necessity, not a victory to be savored. She had done what she had to do to protect herself and her future. She turned to Arthur Finch. "Thank you, Arthur," she said quietly. "I think your work here is done." Finch gave a small, respectful bow of his head. "The pleasure was all mine, Mrs. Davin." He closed his briefcase with 2 decisive clicks, the sound sealing Marcus's fate. But Isabelle wasn't finished. This was not just about tearing Marcus down. It was about her own ascent from the ashes. She was a major benefactor of the St. Jude's Foundation, and as the wife of the event chair, she was listed on the program as a keynote speaker. It was time to deliver her speech. With a grace and poise that defied the chaos of the preceding moments, she walked towards the stage. The event organizers, who had been frozen in panicked indecision, saw her approach and instinctively parted for her. The technical crew, sensing a shift, killed the frantic background music and readjusted the spotlight following her as she ascended the few steps to the podium. She stood where her husband had stood just minutes before, toasting his own arrogance. The room fell silent once more, but this time it was a silence of rapt attention, of awe. Isabelle looked out over the sea of faces, the powerful, the wealthy, the influential. She adjusted the microphone, her hands steady. "Good evening." She began, her voice calm and strong, amplified throughout the cavernous hall. "My husband was just up here speaking about new beginnings, about passion and vision, and on that, for the first time in a long time, we find ourselves in agreement." A murmur went through the crowd. "For 15 years I have been a partner," she continued, her voice resonating with quiet power. "I believed in partnership built on trust, loyalty, and mutual respect. I have learned tonight that some partnerships are not built to last, but foundations are. Legacies are." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room, meeting the eyes of friends, of business associates, of people who had known her only as Marcus Davin's elegant wife. The St. Jude's Foundation is a testament to what can be built with integrity and a true, unwavering commitment to a noble cause. It is about protecting the vulnerable and building a better future. These are values I hold dear, values that going forward will be the sole guide for all my endeavors. She leaned closer to the microphone. "Tonight I was scheduled to announce a joint donation of $1 million from the Davin family. That plan has changed." The room held its breath. Instead, Isabelle declared, her voice ringing with conviction, "I am personally pledging $5 million to the St. Jude's Children's Foundation." Gasps of astonishment, and then a wave of spontaneous, thunderous applause filled the ballroom. It was a staggering sum, a power move of incredible proportions. She wasn't just divorcing her husband. She was financially eclipsing him on the grandest stage possible. "Furthermore," she called out, as the applause began to subside, "I am announcing the formation of my own foundation, the Isabelle D. Foundation for Ethical Enterprise and Women's Empowerment. Its first mission will be to fund and mentor female entrepreneurs who lead with integrity so they never have to compromise their values or find their futures stolen by the deceit of others." The applause that followed was deafening. It was a standing ovation. Harrison Blackwood was clapping the loudest, a look of profound respect on his face. The women in the room in particular were on their feet, their faces alight with admiration. In one speech, Isabelle had transformed herself from the wronged wife into a philanthropic powerhouse, a symbol of resilience and strength. She had not only won the battle, she had rewritten the entire narrative. Marcus was no longer the central character in the story. He was a footnote, a disgraced catalyst for the rise of Isabelle Davin. He watched from below the stage, utterly defeated, as the world that was once his gave her a hero's ovation. Isabelle gave a small, graceful nod, a queen acknowledging her court. She then walked off the stage, not back towards the drama, but towards a side exit where her driver was waiting. She did not look back at her husband. She was already focused on her new beginning, leaving him to be consumed by the ruins of the life he had so carelessly destroyed. The dawn that followed the St. Jude's Gala broke over New York City, with a cold, impartial light illuminating two vastly different realities. For Marcus Davin, it was a dawn of damnation. He awoke not in his palatial Park Avenue penthouse, but in a sterile, anonymous suite at the Four Seasons, a place he had fled to in a blind panic. The first thing he noticed was the silence, a stark contrast to the usual morning hum of his life. No housekeeper bringing coffee, no Isabelle moving gracefully through the rooms. Then he saw his phone on the nightstand. It showed 97 missed calls, over 200 unread messages. A digital avalanche of panic condemnation and morbid curiosity. He switched on the television, and his own haggard, humiliated face stared back at him from every major news channel. The footage of Isabelle's arrival of Finch, serving the papers of his public denunciation by Harrison Blackwood, was playing on a loop. Pundits were not just dissecting a divorce, they were performing a corporate autopsy with him as the corpse. His own high-powered corporate lawyer, a man named Garrett Shaw, left a string of increasingly frantic voicemails, culminating in one that simply said, "Marcus, do not speak to anyone. The U.S. Attorney's Office has already reached out. This is a 5-alarm fire." For Isabelle Davin, the dawn brought a profound, cleansing quiet. She woke in her own bed, the crimson gown from the night before, draped over a chair like a discarded battle standard. The vast penthouse, once a shared space, felt different, larger, filled with potential. It was hers now. She made coffee herself, the simple act feeling like a reclamation. She didn't turn on the television. She didn't need to. She had written the script. Instead, she sat by the large window overlooking the park, watching the city come to life, and began to make a list. Not of grievances, but of objectives. Her war was not over. It had simply entered a new constructive phase. The first objective was met later that day. At the headquarters of Davin Industries, in a boardroom lined with portraits of Marcus's father and grandfather, the remaining board members assembled. Harrison Blackwood presided over the meeting with the grim authority of a hanging judge. Marcus was not invited. His presence was represented by his lawyer, Garrett Shaw, who looked pale and beleaguered. "The facts are clear." Blackwood began, his voice like gravel. "Davin's actions have exposed this company to catastrophic legal and financial risk. He has embarrassed us. He has defrauded us. And he has in one night torched a reputation built over 50 years. The stock is in freefall. Our lenders are calling. This is not a discussion. This is a sanitation effort." The vote was a mere formality. Marcus Davin was stripped of his titles, his access to the building revoked, his corporate accounts frozen. He was officially an exile from the kingdom he had once ruled. Meanwhile, the ripples of the gala continued to spread, engulfing the smaller players. Sienna Hayes found her world had shrunk to the size of a friend's cramped studio apartment in Astoria, Queens. Her glamorous clothes and jewelry, bought with Marcus's money, felt like a cheap costume. Her phone buzzed not with invitations, but with threats and vile messages from strangers. Marcus had blocked her number. She was a pariah. The true terror arrived 2 days later in the form of a knock on the door. A stern-faced man in a cheap suit served her with a subpoena to testify before a grand jury regarding her knowledge of Apex Global Holdings. As she stared at the official document, the words blurring through her tears, she finally understood. She had never been his partner. She had been a high-risk disposable asset, and she had just been liquidated. While their worlds collapsed, Isabelle was building. Her penthouse became a command center. Her team assembled daily. Arthur Finch managing the legal blitzkrieg. A sharp, formidable PR executive named Clara Rossi who was shaping the public narrative. And a shrewd wealth manager who was helping Isabelle untangle her finances and lay the groundwork for her new foundation. "The media is framing you as the avenging angel," Clara reported in one meeting, pointing to a series of headlines. "It's powerful, but we need to pivot from revenge to renaissance. The foundation is the key. It redefines your identity from the ex-Mrs. Davin to Isabelle D. founder and philanthropist." Isabelle listened absorbed and directed. "The name is crucial. It needs to be forward-looking. The Isabelle D. Foundation for Ethical Enterprise and Women's Empowerment." She stated the name she had conceived and announced on stage. "Our mission isn't just to give money. It's to build scaffolding for women who have the talent but lack the access to ensure their ventures are built on unshakable ethical ground." Her clarity and vision impressed them all. This was not a woman being guided by professionals. This was a CEO leading her new venture. The ultimate, most stunning validation came a week later. The call came directly to her private line. "Isabelle, it's Harrison Blackwood." His voice was respectful, almost deferential. "I'm calling on behalf of the board of Davin Industries. We are in a crisis of confidence. The brand is toxic because of Marcus. The only person who has emerged from this with their reputation enhanced, in fact burnished to a high shine, is you." Isabelle was silent, listening. "The company needs you," Blackwood said bluntly. "You were the strategic mind behind the early successes. You have the name, but more importantly, you have the integrity. We want to offer you a seat on the board of directors." The irony was so thick she could taste it. To sit in the seat of power her husband had just been violently ejected from. Her first instinct was to refuse to cut all ties. But then she thought of the employees of the legacy, a legacy that was as much hers as it was his. It was her strategy that had guided its early growth. It was her inheritance, too, in a way. "Harrison," she replied, her voice steady. "I will accept, on 2 conditions. First, the board must fund a complete top-to-bottom independent review of the company's ethical compliance protocols. Second, the company will become a cornerstone benefactor of my foundation." Blackwood didn't hesitate. "Done. Welcome to the board, Isabelle." A month later, a letter arrived forwarded by Arthur Finch's office. It was handwritten on cheap stationery, the handwriting messy and agitated. It was from Marcus. She considered throwing it away, but a need for finality made her open it. It was not an apology. It was a rambling, self-pitying screed, blaming her for his downfall, calling her vindictive and cruel, lamenting his lost fortune. He wrote of her public ambush and how she had destroyed him for a moment of pride. Reading it, Isabelle felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even pity. It was like reading a letter from a bitter stranger. The man she had loved, the partner she had built a life with, was truly gone. This pathetic, whining creature was all that remained. She folded the letter, walked to the fireplace, and dropped it into the flames, watching the bitter words turn to grey ash and disappear. That was her closure. The final word on the saga of Marcus Davin came during a final wrap-up meeting with Arthur Finch. "The plea agreement has been finalized," Finch reported, closing a file. "He'll plead guilty to 3 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of securities fraud. He avoids jail time, but he's paying over $200 million in fines and restitution. He is permanently barred from the securities industry. He's finished." "And Miss Hayes?" Isabelle asked. "Testified against him in exchange for immunity," Finch said with a shrug. "Last I heard, she'd moved back to her parents' home in Ohio, a rather steep fall from the Olympic Tower." Finch looked at Isabelle, a rare, genuine smile touching his lips. "You did not just win a case, Mrs. Davin. You navigated an impossible situation with a courage and strategic brilliance I have seldom witnessed. You reclaimed a life." Later that evening, Isabelle stood in her new office, the headquarters of her thriving foundation. She looked out the panoramic window at the tapestry of city lights. Each light was a story, a struggle, a dream. A year ago, she had looked out at this same city and seen the boundaries of a gilded cage. Now she saw a landscape of infinite possibility. She had learned the hardest lesson, that the strongest fortresses are not built of brick and stone or shared wealth. They are built within oneself, forged from integrity, resilience, and the courage to burn down a life that is a lie, to build a new one that is the truth. She was not the woman who was betrayed. She was the woman who survived, who fought back, and who had in the end won everything that mattered. The fall of one empire is often the foundation of another. Isabelle Davin's story is a powerful reminder that the deepest betrayals can sometimes forge the strongest versions of ourselves. She walked into that ballroom as a wife who had been wronged, but she walked out as a leader who had taken control of her own destiny. Her journey from the ashes of a broken marriage to the helm of her own foundation shows that true power isn't about the name you carry, but the integrity you uphold. If Isabelle's transformation from quiet partner to public powerhouse inspired you, please let us know in the comments. What part of her story resonated with you the most? Don't forget to like this video.
Pregnant wife confronts millionaire husband at a hotel bar after catching him with mistress. A hushed tension filled the opulent bar at the Plaza Hotel, where glittering chandeliers shimmered over velvet seats and polished floors. There, near the gleaming marble counter, stood Anna, her heart thundering, her pregnant belly a silent testament to months of secrets and suspicions. She couldn't tear her eyes away from Daniel, her billionaire husband, who was leaning far too close to a woman in a figure-hugging red dress. A swirl of betrayal and fury surged through Anna's veins, compelling her to take a step forward. Voices in her mind warned her to run, but she couldn't. She had come too far to simply turn back now. Anna Calhoun married Daniel Calhoun 3 years ago in a lavish ceremony that lit up the society pages. Every detail had been meticulously planned, the grand hall decorated with over 100,000 white roses, the custom lace gown from Vera Wang, the multi-tiered cake that shimmered under chandeliers. Their union was celebrated like a fairy tale come to life, but Anna never quite believed in perfect fairy tales. She knew that behind the sparkle of wealth there could be long shadows of ambition, secrecy, and unspoken resentments. Before marrying Daniel, Anna was a small-town girl from Ohio. Her father worked at a local auto parts factory, and her mother taught second-grade children. Anna's ambition was to move to a bustling city, maybe become a journalist or writer, to share stories of courage and transformation. Meeting Daniel was the biggest transformation of her life. He was everything she had ever imagined: tall, charismatic, financially successful beyond reason. His business empire, Calhoun Industries, owned a chain of global tech firms, real estate investments, and even a few luxury brands. By the time Anna met him at an art fundraiser in Manhattan, Daniel had already claimed the title of billionaire and the attention of every socialite in New York. They had a whirlwind romance, exclusive dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, spontaneous trips to Europe in his private jet, and passionate nights in his penthouse overlooking Central Park. Yet even in those heady days, Anna sometimes felt a rift forming. Daniel was always on his phone, dealing with urgent matters, whispering about investor calls. At first, she attributed it to the demands of high-stakes business. But over time, the phone calls grew more secretive, the late-night meetings more frequent, and the explanations less convincing. When Anna discovered she was pregnant, she was overjoyed. She hoped this would help them both reconnect and step away from the shadows that seemed to linger. But as her belly grew, Daniel seemed more distant than ever. Dinners at home became dinners alone. Business trips multiplied, and the rumors, those echoing whispers of a mistress, began to swirl among the staff of their penthouse. It was a housekeeper's accidental mention that first planted a seed of doubt in Anna's mind. There was talk of Daniel being seen at odd hours with a mysterious woman, a swirl of perfume clinging to his suits at times when he was allegedly just working late. She tried to confront Daniel, gently at first, but he brushed her off, blaming overwork and outside pressures. Anna wasn't satisfied, but she lacked concrete proof. With the pregnancy draining her energy, she buried her doubts, hoping her husband would come to his senses, or that her mind was simply exaggerating from hormones and stress. A love so strong couldn't just vanish, she convinced herself daily. She tried to recall the simple, genuine moments early in their relationship, nights of laughter and comfort, their shared dreams for a happy family. It was enough to keep her afloat, at least for a little while. One evening, Anna was in her study, once her writing nook, now more of a neglected corner, when the phone rang. Daniel had forgotten his personal phone at home. On the caller ID, an unfamiliar name flashed, Tessa. Something in Anna's chest tightened, a primal sense of dread. She answered. A female voice, sultry and self-assured, asked for Daniel. Anna struggled to keep her voice calm. "He's not here right now," Anna said. "May I ask who's calling?" "This is Tessa, his business associate," the woman replied. "We have a meeting scheduled in an hour. Just let him know I'll be waiting at the Golden Vine restaurant. He'll know what it's about." When Anna confronted Daniel about Tessa later, the expression on his face was fleeting, caught between guilt and feigned indifference. He insisted Tessa was just a new consultant he'd hired to help with a deal overseas. In typical Daniel fashion, he pivoted the conversation, making Anna feel childish for suspecting anything. But the weight in her chest refused to fade. As the weeks passed, more odd incidents surfaced. Jewelry receipts in Daniel's briefcase that didn't match anything Anna had ever seen. Cryptic texts on his phone that he shielded from view. He started wearing cologne she'd never smelled before. Where once he would come home from an overseas trip, eager to hold her, now he walked in, phone pressed to his ear, barely acknowledging her presence. The baby in her belly kicked more vigorously each time a new wave of doubt battered her heart, as if the little life inside her sensed the tension. Late one night, Anna found herself pacing the bedroom. She touched the framed photo from their wedding, her reflection glimmering in the glass. She remembered how safe she felt in Daniel's arms, how he promised to protect her from life's harsh winds. Yet here she was, uncertain, anxious, desperate for answers. She was pregnant and exhausted, but a fierce resolve flickered within her. She would find the truth, no matter the cost. The decisive clue came from someone Anna least expected to help, Daniel's younger sister, Alicia. While Alicia wasn't particularly close with Anna, they had had their share of frosty interactions at family gatherings. She had a streak of empathy for the unborn baby. Alicia worried about Anna's health under so much stress. With eyebrows furrowed, Alicia confessed that she overheard Daniel talking about meeting Tessa at the Plaza Hotel bar in New York City. He was apparently quite insistent on secrecy. Alicia suspected it wasn't the first time they'd met there. Anna's heart hammered. The Plaza Hotel was famous for its exclusivity. The bar, adorned with classic decor and a refined ambience, was a hotspot for discreet high society meetups. If Daniel was meeting Tessa there, it wasn't for a simple business chat. Anna realized she had to see it with her own eyes. She wouldn't rest until she had the unfiltered truth. She waited for the right moment. Daniel mentioned a business meeting scheduled for Friday evening. His manner was evasive, and he declined to give more details. That was enough for Anna. She planned meticulously, rehearsing scenarios. One moment she felt confident, steeled by righteous anger. The next, she was consumed by heartbreak, wishing she could bury her head in the sand. But in the end, the baby's well-being fueled her determination. She needed to know if this marriage, this life she was building, was a lie. Friday evening arrived, carrying a cold wind that rustled through the streets of Manhattan. Anna stepped out of a taxi a block away from the plaza. She wore a simple black maternity dress that clung to her swollen belly. She felt every bit the wronged heroine in a tragic play, but she forced herself to keep going. The doorman recognized her from past events. She offered a tight-lipped smile and prayed he wouldn't make a fuss. Luckily, he didn't. She glided into the lobby, heart pounding like thunder. Light from the grand chandeliers sparkled across the marble floors, reminiscent of a star-filled sky. She could barely hear the piano music in the background over the roar in her ears. Every footstep echoed like a final countdown to the confrontation. She found her way to the bar, a dimly lit space with plush seating and a sophisticated hush. She paused near a large palm plant, scanning the room. Then she saw them, Daniel and Tessa, at a small corner table, heads bent close, a bottle of expensive champagne half consumed. Tessa's laughter cut through the hush like a blade, confident and almost mocking. Her hand rested on Daniel's wrist. The spark in his eyes, so foreign to Anna these days, made Anna's stomach churn. Anna nearly turned around, wanting to escape the agony, but something in her refused to run. The baby stirred, giving her courage. She stepped forward, each step measured. She reached their table, her shadow falling over the pair, who looked up in surprise. Daniel's expression twisted into panic, while Tessa's red lips curled into a subtle, knowing smile. The moment felt suspended in time. Anna realized every fear, every suspicion had been warranted. She inhaled deeply and spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. "Daniel, I see your business meeting is going well." Daniel stood so abruptly that his chair screeched across the marble floor. Eyes from other guests darted toward the commotion. Tessa, with an unsettling composure, calmly sipped from her glass. Anna could see the condescension in her gaze, as though Tessa relished the scene. "Anna," Daniel began, hands raised in a gesture of surrender. Why are you here?" Anna tightened her grip on her purse strap. Her voice was cold and steady. "I think the better question is why you're here." She looked pointedly at Tessa, then at the half-empty champagne bottle. The golden bubbles sparkled like shattered trust, and with her, no less, the hush in the bar intensified. Daniel's face flushed. Tessa slowly stood, adjusting the folds of her glamorous red dress. She wore an emerald necklace that glimmered in the low light, a necklace that Anna recognized from a suspicious jewelry receipt she'd once found. "I don't think we need a scene," Tessa said lightly, looking around as if annoyed by the attention. Her confidence stoked Anna's anger. Tessa turned to Daniel with a smirk. "Maybe we should go somewhere else." "You're not going anywhere," Anna interjected, leveling her gaze at both of them. The baby shifted in her belly, an echo of the turmoil raging inside her. "Daniel, explain. Right here, right now. Daniel glanced around at the onlookers. He lowered his voice, attempting to steer them toward a more private corner. But Anna refused to move. She wanted the truth, wanted it in public, if that's what it took to finally shatter the lies. When Daniel didn't speak, Tessa decided to fill the silence. "Anna, darling," she purred, "I'm sure this is all very confusing for you in your condition. But Daniel and I have business that involves negotiations, consultations, that sort of thing. He just wanted a quieter place to talk. That's all." Anna bristled at Tessa's condescending tone. "It's quite a negotiation," she spat. "Necklaces, champagne, an intimate corner booth. Really, I'd love to hear the details of this lucrative contract." She turned again to Daniel. "Is this where all your late nights and secretive phone calls have gone? Is she your strategy to expand your empire?" Daniel pressed his lips into a grim line, cheeks burning with shame. He mumbled that they should leave the bar to discuss things privately, but Anna's fury was unstoppable. "Go on," she demanded, tears threatening to escape. "I want to hear you say it. Tell me that what I'm seeing is just business." Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. The tension drew audible gasps from nearby patrons. Anna's heart pounded with the velocity of betrayal. She realized in that moment how deeply she had hoped to be wrong. Even confronted with evidence, she'd clung to the desperate belief that there might be a misunderstanding. But Daniel's silence roared the truth. Her husband, the one person she trusted above all else, had shattered her world. Slowly, she felt the heat of her fury give way to an icy numbness. She placed a protective hand over her belly. It was a subtle gesture, but it spoke volumes. She might be broken, but she wasn't alone. Life thrived within her, and she would protect it at any cost. Tessa took a step back, eyes flicking to Daniel. "I think I'll leave you two to figure this out." "Daniel, call me when you—" "Don't you dare walk away," Anna snapped, surprising even herself with the force in her voice. "Not until I get an answer." She was tired of being brushed aside, tired of letting others dictate her life. If Tessa thought she could simply slip away, she was mistaken. Under the weight of her glare, Tessa paused. An uneasy silence stretched. Daniel opened and closed his fists at his sides, clearly struggling to maintain composure in front of the growing crowd. "Anna," Daniel whispered, his eyes pleading, "let's go upstairs. We can reserve a private suite here at the plaza, just to talk." "Please, not here. You've done plenty here already," Anna said, voice trembling with a mix of heartbreak and rage. "No. Whatever you have to say it now. In front of me, this crowd, and your mistress." A hush blanketed the room as Daniel inhaled a shaky breath. For a moment, guilt glimmered in his eyes. Then, as if a dam had burst, words began tumbling out. He admitted he'd been seeing Tessa for a few months, initially for business advice. One deal led to after meeting drinks, which led to something more. He hadn't meant for it to happen, but it did. He was ashamed. He claimed he still loved Anna and wanted to make things right, but he was in so deep, he didn't know how to pull himself out. Anna stood there, trembling, tears burning behind her eyes. She felt the eyes of the bar upon her, some pitying, some judging. She wanted to scream, to collapse, to rage at the unfairness of it all. Instead, she managed a choked whisper, "After meeting drinks? You had an affair while I carried our child." Daniel flinched. Tessa, to her credit, seemed momentarily uncomfortable. Or perhaps that was just Anna, imagining a flicker of shame. Tessa's mask of confidence never slipped far. "I didn't expect things to go this far," Tessa offered, as though that was any consolation. Anna couldn't bear to stand there any longer. She turned on her heels, ignoring Daniel's pleas to wait. She hurried out of the bar, the clack of her heels echoing loudly in her ears. The baby shifted again, and Anna fought back the tears until she was safely out of sight. Only once she reached the lobby restroom did she let the sobs break free. Anna locked herself in a spacious stall and let her tears flow freely. She pressed her head against the cool tile wall, feeling a world of anguish crashing over her. The memory of Tessa's smirk, Daniel's faltering excuses, and the pitying glances of strangers all merged into a suffocating cloud. She looked down at her swollen belly. The baby was due in a few months. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, voice trembling. She had to protect her child, but how? Her entire life, her marriage, her trust, her sense of security was unraveling. She realized this was more than just an affair. It was a betrayal of vows, of a foundation they had promised to build together. Anger flared up once again, mingling with desperation. She wiped her tears and pulled her phone from her purse, ignoring the chaos of missed calls and frantic messages from Daniel. She dialed Alicia's number. "I caught him," Anna managed, voice unsteady. Alicia's gasp on the other end was all the confirmation she needed. Alicia offered to come pick her up, but Anna declined. She wanted no more humiliation for the night, no more public scenes. With a shaky determination, she left the restroom and headed for the elevator banks. If Daniel wanted to talk privately, she would give him the chance, if only to secure clarity for herself and for her unborn child. She pressed the call button, eyes catching her reflection in the mirrored wall, puffy eyes, smudged makeup, heartbreak etched into every line of her face. The elevator dinged open. She stepped inside, fists clenched. She would face Daniel, but on her terms. And she would find out just how deep his lies ran. On the 15th floor of the plaza, Daniel had hastily booked a suite. A trembling bellhop led Anna to a door, his eyes darting nervously between Anna's tear-streaked face and the plush hallway. He seemed to sense the tension and hurried away the moment he set down her suitcase of belongings that she had spontaneously grabbed from the penthouse before following Daniel. Anna paused outside the door, breath uneven. She knew Daniel was inside, waiting. She could almost feel his guilt seeping through the walls. But she had to do this. After a few seconds, she slid the keycard through the lock and entered. Daniel stood near the large bay window overlooking Fifth Avenue. City lights twinkled like fallen stars, a stark contrast to the turmoil within the room. He turned, eyes red-rimmed. He looked like he wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. Anna shut the door softly behind her. She kept her back against it, as though needing physical support. "You wanted privacy," she said in a low tone. "Now we have it. Talk." Daniel cleared his throat. "Anna, I'm sorry. I never intended to hurt you. Things just spiraled. Tessa was helping me with a new tech expansion in Europe. We started spending time together, and it got complicated. That's all?" Anna asked bitterly. "You got bored with your pregnant wife at home, so you decided to spend time with another woman?" Shame flickered in his eyes. "That's not how it started. But yes, that's where it ended up. And it was wrong. I hate myself for it." He stepped closer, but Anna held up a hand to stop him. "What about me? About us?" Her voice cracked. "Did you consider what this would do to me? Or to our child?" Daniel swallowed hard. "I was an idiot. I got caught up in the excitement, the secrecy. But it meant nothing, Anna. I swear. I care about you. I care about our baby." "Sure," Anna snapped. "When did you plan to mention the jewelry you bought her? Or the private dinners? Or the champagne in that bar? Because it sure looked like it meant something. Or were you going to wait until one accidentally walked in on you again?" He faltered, unable to produce a decent excuse. Anna felt a wave of nausea. The emotional stress, combined with her pregnancy, was overwhelming. She sank into an armchair, pressing a hand to her belly. Instantly, Daniel rushed to her side, concern flashing in his eyes. "Don't touch me," she hissed, though she was grateful to be seated. "You made your choices. Now deal with the consequences." For a moment, Daniel stood helpless, arms hovering as if wanting to support her. His voice was raw when he finally spoke. "I love you, Anna. This was a mistake, a terrible, regrettable mistake. But I need a chance to fix this. I can break it off with Tessa immediately. I'll do anything you want. Just, please don't leave me." Anna stared at him, disbelief roiling in her gut. "You think it's that easy? Just end it with Tessa, and everything goes back to normal?" She let out a hollow laugh. "You lied to me for months. You made me question my sanity when I suspected you. You forced me to catch you red-handed for you to even admit the truth. You think I can just forget that?" Daniel's face fell, and tears shimmered in his eyes. He started to speak, but Anna held up a finger. She needed to say her piece. "Marriage is built on trust, and you've broken that trust in the cruelest way possible while I'm carrying our child. Even if I wanted to forgive you, I'm not sure I could. It hurts too much." A strangled sob escaped Daniel. In all the time Anna had known him, she had never seen him so vulnerable. He was a billionaire, used to controlling outcomes and paying his way out of problems. But here, in this suite, with the city lights behind him, he was just a man facing the wreckage of his actions. Anna felt the faint stirring of pity, but overshadowing that was rage, heartbreak, and a fierce maternal instinct to shield her unborn baby from further pain. "I need time," she whispered, voice heavy with exhaustion. "I need space to think. So many months you were with her. I don't know how to process that. I don't even know if I can." Daniel reached out a trembling hand. "I'll give you whatever you need. Please, let me make this right. I'll cut Tessa out. I'll see a counselor. His words tapered off as Anna shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "It might be too late for that," she said softly, then rose from the chair. Before Daniel could protest, she walked toward the door. "I'm going home. Alone." He called out her name, but Anna walked down the corridor without looking back, stepping into an elevator that felt like a confessional booth. As the doors slid shut, she wasn't sure if she was leaving just the suite or the life she and Daniel had built, because it was painfully clear that nothing would ever be the same again. Anna spent the night at their penthouse guest room, locking the door to keep Daniel out. She wanted distance, but ironically, her mind was racing through every detail of the confrontation, refusing to let her rest. Her phone buzzed relentlessly with messages from Daniel. Apologies, promises, pleas. She stared at them through bleary eyes, unsure if the man she once adored existed anymore. The next morning, Alicia arrived unannounced, letting herself in with the spare key. Anna was still in her nightgown, dark circles under her eyes. Alicia immediately enveloped her in a hug. It was the first act of genuine kindness Anna had felt in what seemed like ages, and it nearly broke her resolve. She wept into Alicia's shoulder, words tumbling out about how the affair had started, how Tessa was intimately involved in Daniel's new business projects, and how everything felt irreparably shattered. Alicia stroked her hair and listened patiently. "I had a bad feeling," Alicia murmured. "Daniel's been so secretive, even with me. I wish I'd told you sooner. I'm sorry." Anna pulled away, wiping her tears. "It's not your fault. Daniel made his choice. I don't know how to handle it." Alicia hesitated, then admitted, "There's more you should know. I didn't mention it because I wasn't sure, but I suspect Tessa isn't just a random consultant. She's been linked to other powerful men, and word is she uses her relationships to gain control in business deals. There are rumors that she blackmails them." Anna's stomach lurched. "Blackmail? You think Daniel?" Alicia sighed. "I don't know, but Tessa's not the type to let a billionaire slip through her fingers without some gain, especially if it ends badly." This revelation weighed on Anna like a boulder. The baby kicked, as if sensing her tension. She realized that the nightmare might stretch beyond personal betrayal into scandal, threats, public humiliation. Could Tessa have planned All this, seeing Daniel as a ticket to wealth and power. At that moment, Daniel knocked softly on the guest room door. "Anna? Alicia? Can I come in?" Anna looked to Alicia, who gave a subtle nod. Anna cracked open the door. Daniel stood there, looking disheveled, eyes rimmed with red. He glanced at Alicia but focused on Anna. "We need to talk. It's urgent." He inhaled sharply. "I got word this morning that Tessa's threatening to leak details of our relationship to the media unless I pay her a large sum. She also hinted at some damaging files, some corporate deals that she claims could ruin my reputation. I swear I didn't know about any blackmail. She's never asked for money until now, but apparently she's recorded conversations, has photos. Anna, if this gets out, it could ruin everything." Anna's head spun. Alicia shot her a pointed look. This was exactly what she'd feared. Anna braced herself, swallowing the bitter taste of betrayal. Her voice was icy. "So now you want my help?" After humiliating me in front of half of New York, Daniel wiped a hand over his face. "I deserve that. But yes, I need your help. I can't handle this alone." And his gaze flickered to Anna's stomach. "I want to make sure our child doesn't grow up with a father in disgrace. I know you might not want to be with me anymore, but please, at least help me face this problem." A swirl of conflict tore through Anna. Part of her wanted to say no, to let Daniel stew in the mess he created. But she knew the scandal would drag her down as well and possibly harm the baby. Reluctantly, she nodded. "We'll talk, but don't expect forgiveness." Seated around the living room table, Anna, Alicia, and Daniel pored over the text messages Tessa had sent. The demands were explicit. A $5 million payment transferred discreetly to an offshore account in exchange for her silence. She threatened to leak incriminating pictures and audio to tabloids if Daniel refused. There was a mention of a tech competitor who would love to see Daniel's empire crumble. It was a twisted labyrinth of threats, secrets, and potential ruin. Anna felt sick reading Tessa's smug words. "She's basically using your affair as leverage to blackmail you," she said, voice shaking. "You gave her everything she needed, Daniel. How could you be so careless?" He bowed his head. "I was blinded by lust, by stupidity. I never thought she'd do this." "Well, she did," Alicia snapped. "So what's the plan? Pay her? Go to the police? Try to reason with her?" Daniel stared at the text messages, despair etched into his features. Paying her might only encourage more demands. Going to the police would make this public and a huge scandal. If she really has incriminating material about my business deals, it could trigger an investigation. My investors would pull out. The board would lose faith. We could lose billions. Anna's frustration peaked. "So your primary concern is your business?" He lifted his eyes, desperation and regret mingling. "No, I'm worried about us, about you and the baby. I know I messed up, but I still have responsibilities to everyone who works at my companies, to our employees and shareholders. If Tessa's threats are real, a scandal of that magnitude could destroy countless livelihoods. I need to handle this carefully." Anna exhaled heavily, forcing herself to remain calm. "Fine. So what do we do?" They brainstormed. Alicia suggested contacting a top-notch security firm. Anna recommended gathering any evidence they had that could discredit Tessa. Daniel hesitated, worrying that might spur Tessa to release her dirt sooner. Eventually, they decided to meet Tessa on neutral ground, a private law office under the guidance of Daniel's legal counsel, to see if they could negotiate a resolution without succumbing to blackmail or inciting further wrath. Anna felt her heart pounding as they arranged the meeting for the next day. Part of her still reeled from the personal betrayal. Now she was thrown into corporate intrigue that could overshadow everything else. She realized with dismay that Tessa hadn't just hurt her marriage, she had inserted herself into the very framework of Daniel's world. and by extension, Anna's world too. The next day, Anna arrived at the high-rise law firm with Alicia and Daniel. A team of attorneys awaited them in a gleaming conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Tessa was scheduled to appear in an hour. The tension was palpable. Anna sat at the far end of the long mahogany table, hands clasped over her belly. She wished she were anywhere else. She scanned the array of serious suits, Daniel's top corporate lawyer, a crisis manager who specialized in high-profile scandals, and a private investigator discreetly situated in a corner. Everyone murmured in hushed voices, analyzing possible outcomes. The clock ticked ominously until the moment Tessa swept in, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit and exuding an air of supreme confidence. She didn't come alone. Her own attorney, a sharp-faced woman with a briefcase, followed close behind. Tessa's eyes locked onto Daniel, then darted to Anna. A flicker of something akin to contempt passed over her features. "Shall we sit?" Tessa said coolly, gesturing to the table. Her attorney placed a stack of documents before them. "We can keep this simple. I have what I have, you have the funds you have. Let's not complicate matters." Anna's anger burned. She wanted to scream at Tessa for daring to speak so casually after everything she'd done. But she kept silent, letting Daniel's lawyers take the lead. They questioned the validity of Tessa's supposed evidence, demanded proof. Tessa smirked and played an audio snippet on her phone. Daniel's voice discussing sensitive information about an upcoming merger, coupled with flirtatious banter. It was enough to make Anna's stomach churn, and enough to prove Tessa did have leverage. The negotiation spiraled into a tense standoff. Tessa demanded immediate payment. Daniel's team insisted on partial disbursement only after Tessa signed a non-disclosure agreement and handed over all evidence. Tessa's lawyer coolly retorted that a single payment was non-negotiable, or the media would receive a juicy scandal. Anna fought the urge to slam her fist on the table. Instead, she said quietly, "Tessa, why are you doing this? You already had Daniel. You had the affair. Isn't that what you wanted?" Tessa glanced at Anna, a faint smirk playing on her lips. "What I want is to be compensated for my time and expertise. This is business, Anna. Don't take it so personally. Daniel and I had a relationship, yes, but that's not the real story here. The real story is the power I hold, power you were never going to have." Daniel clenched his jaw, about to respond, but Anna's gentle but firm voice cut him off. "You talk about power as though it's everything, but real power isn't about money or blackmail. It's about respect, loyalty, empathy, things you clearly know nothing about." Tessa's eyes flickered with disdain, but she stayed silent. Her lawyer, however, pressed the matter, returning to the demands. Hours ticked by. Negotiations punctuated by tense silences, phone calls, half-hearted compromises. In the end, no agreement was reached. Tessa refused to budge on her single-payment ultimatum. Daniel's lawyers refused to release such a vast sum without guaranteed destruction of all evidence. As Tessa rose to leave, she shot a parting remark, chilling and succinct. "You have 48 hours to decide, Daniel. After that, the tapes go public. And trust me, once they do, your entire world will crumble." Then she swept out, leaving the conference room in a state of shock. Night fell, and the law office cleared out. Daniel, Alicia, and Anna remained, quietly discussing next steps with the crisis manager, a man named Robert Gaines. He laid out the stark reality. If Tessa released the incriminating evidence, Daniel's personal and professional reputation would be in shambles. Investors would flee, lawsuits could ensue, and the scandal would ripple into Anna's life, their unborn child's future, and every philanthropic endeavor the Calhoun name was tied to. Alicia fumed, pacing back and forth. She's bluffing. She must be bluffing, she insisted, though her tone lacked conviction. Daniel ran a hand through his disheveled hair. I'm not sure. Even if half of it is bluff, the other half is still damaging. Anna rubbed her temples, exhaustion gripping her. What do we do, Robert? Robert adjusted his tie, the strain of the day etched on his face. My recommendation is to gather any counter-evidence or to secure an injunction against Tessa, though that process could take time. Alternatively, if you believe Tessa truly won't budge, paying her might be your quickest path out, though ethically. I never recommend capitulating to blackmail. Anna frowned. The idea of simply handing over millions to the woman who wrecked her marriage made her stomach churn. But the stakes were terrifying. She could already imagine tabloids running front-page headlines, billionaire's affair exposed, pregnant wife betrayed. She imagined the paparazzi hounding her, the baby. The thought filled her with dread. She turned to Daniel, her voice weary. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about our child. If Tessa goes public, that scandal will follow our baby forever. Daniel's face tightened. I know, and that's what scares me most. He paused, gathering his thoughts. We have 48 hours. Let's see if we can find a way to discredit her. If we can prove she's blackmailed others, or if her evidence is doctored, we might weaken her position. Robert, can you get your investigator on that? Robert nodded. I'll start immediately. Good, Daniel said, and if it fails, we'll decide if paying her is a necessary evil. Anna and Alicia exchanged worried looks. This was not a simple negotiation, not a typical business deal. A wave of despair washed over Anna. She recalled the day she said I do to Daniel, believing in a bright future. Now, just a short time later, she was haggling with lawyers and crisis managers, dealing with the fallout of an affair she never dreamed possible. Yet, in the darkest corner of her heart, Anna felt a flicker of resolve. She wasn't just a victim. She was a mother. And for the sake of her child, she would find a way to navigate this hellish predicament, even if it meant facing unimaginable confrontations. Over the next day, Robert's investigator unearthed a trove of rumors tying Tessa to past blackmail attempts. However, most of those cases seemed carefully buried or settled out of court. No one wanted to go on record against her, likely fearing further exposure. Desperate, Anna took a different approach. She reached out to a source from her past, an old friend named Cora, who now worked as a journalist for the New York Times. Cora was known for her investigative tenacity. They met secretly at a small cafe in Midtown, far from the glitz of Daniel's usual haunts. Sitting across from Cora in a quiet booth, Anna explained the situation. She recounted Tessa's threats, the affair, the blackmail. She hadn't intended to share so many personal details, but she trusted Cora's discretion. Cora listened gravely, jotting notes in a small leather notebook. This Tessa sounds like a professional extortionist, Cora said. I might be able to tap some sources, see if there's anything I can dig up that's not publicly known. If I find something, it might help you turn the tables. Anna breathed a shaky sigh of relief. Thank you. Just, please keep my identity under wraps. I don't want a bigger scandal. Cora reached across the table, squeezing Anna's hand gently. I promise, I'll do what I can. Parting ways, Anna felt marginally hopeful. But as the hours ticked closer to Tessa's 48-hour deadline, anxiety gnawed at her. Daniel's entire team was on high alert. Alicia hovered near Anna like a protective sister, while Daniel immersed himself in strategy meetings. Late that evening, Cora called Anna. Her voice was tense. Anna, I dug around. It seems Tessa has ties to a known corporate saboteur. She's done this routine before: lure wealthy men, gather secrets, threaten them, or feed info to business rivals for profit. A chill coursed through Anna. So it's definitely bigger than just an affair. Absolutely, Cora confirmed. She's systematically targeted men who oversee lucrative deals. There's a rumor that she's connected to Winston Mackey, the head of a rival tech conglomerate. If that's true, she might be funneling your husband's secrets directly to him or using them to manipulate Daniel into making bad decisions that favor Mackey's interests. Anna's mind whirled. Winston Mackey was a major competitor in Daniel's sphere. If Tessa was working with him, the stakes were even higher. Daniel's empire might not just suffer from scandal, it could be systematically dismantled. "Thank you, Cora," Anna managed. "This is huge. Use it wisely," Cora advised, and carefully. Armed with Cora's information, Daniel's crisis team launched into overdrive. If Tessa was feeding secrets to Winston Mackey, that constituted industrial espionage. They could threaten Tessa with a lawsuit or even criminal charges if she was found complicit. But they needed proof, and time was running out. The atmosphere in the penthouse felt electric with tension. Anna's phone pinged with a text message from Tessa, a mocking reminder of the deadline. Now just 12 hours away, Alicia prowled the hallways, chewing her nails and cursing under her breath. Daniel retreated to his study with phone calls, trying to gather any intel on Mackey's potential involvement. Just before midnight, Robert, the crisis manager, announced they had enough circumstantial evidence to confront Tessa. While not a smoking gun, it might be enough to scare her into backing down or at least negotiating more favorably. Anna's stomach twisted with dread and morning sickness. She wished none of this was happening. She wished she could be a normal, expectant mother, worried about baby clothes and nursery colors, not blackmail and corporate sabotage. But fate had dealt her this hand, and she resolved to see it through. Strangely, Tessa insisted on meeting again at the Plaza Hotel bar. It was as if she reveled in the very place where Anna caught them. The irony wasn't lost on Anna. But Daniel's team agreed, hoping the public space would discourage Tessa from dramatic outbursts. When Anna arrived, her heart thundered with painful familiarity. The same chandeliers twinkled overhead, the same plush seating, but everything felt colder, sharper. She found Tessa sipping a martini in the corner booth, completely at ease. Her lawyer was absent this time, a power move to appear more personal, no doubt. Daniel, Robert, and Alicia joined Anna. Tessa raised an eyebrow, glancing over the group. "I take it you've decided to pay, then?" Daniel slid into a seat across from her. "Actually, we have some new information. We know you've been in contact with Winston Mackey. Sharing corporate secrets is corporate espionage. We have enough to file charges if you release anything you claim to have. And those charges could put you away for a long time." Tessa's smirk wavered, only slightly, but Anna caught it. "I don't know what you're talking about," Tessa replied, tossing her hair dismissively. Yet a flicker of uncertainty danced in her eyes. Robert pressed a folder to the table. Emails, phone logs, bank transfers. "You've been in discussions with a shell company that leads directly back to Mackey. If you expose any private data about Calhoun Industries, we'll have proof you did so with criminal intent." Tessa's eyes narrowed. "So what's this? A bluff? Try us." Alicia shot back, her voice ice cold. Anna watched Tessa's face carefully. Beneath that veneer of confidence, Anna spotted fear. The blackmail scheme was built on her advantage, an advantage that had now evaporated. She had power only if Daniel was scared, but now he had evidence that could ruin her. For a moment, Tessa seemed to calculate her next move. Then, with a sigh, she leaned back, swirling her martini. "Fine. You've done your homework, so let's talk real numbers." Daniel blinked. "Numbers? We just told you we can take this to court if you try anything." Tessa chuckled humorlessly. "And you'll cause a scandal in the process, right? You think the press won't cover a corporate espionage suit? Your dirty laundry will be aired out anyway." My guess is you still want this buried. So how about a reduced fee for my silence? 2 million, not 5. I'll sign whatever agreement you want, and we all walk away unscathed. Anna felt her blood boil. Tessa was incorrigible, shifting tactics the moment she lost leverage. She was still demanding a fortune for secrecy. Robert coughed, turning to Daniel. This was the moment of decision. Fight and risk everything in a messy trial, or pay and end it quietly. Daniel looked at Anna, helplessness etched in his eyes. She knew what this meant. If Tessa agreed to keep silent, the scandal might be contained. The baby could be protected from a media circus. But it also meant letting Tessa win, to some extent. Anna's heart pounded with conflicting emotions. She didn't want Tessa to profit from her betrayal, yet the baby's future weighed heavily. Finally, Daniel spoke, voice measured. 2 million in exchange for all copies of the evidence, the NDA, and the guarantee of total silence. If you so much as utter my name to the press, we release our evidence of your espionage attempts. Understood? Tessa downed the last of her martini. Understood. I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers. Anna clenched her fists, holding back a storm of emotions. She hated that Tessa was getting away with so much, but she needed to protect herself, her child, and perhaps even Daniel's employees, who depended on his company's stability. The moral compromise stung like a fresh wound. After the confrontation, Tessa left with a triumphant smirk, but not without handing over a flash drive. She claimed it held everything: photos, audio, videos. Robert promised to verify it meticulously, ensuring Tessa wasn't holding back additional copies. Anna stood with Daniel near the bar's entrance, feeling drained and hollow. Alicia gave them space, stepping aside to make a phone call. The bartender discreetly avoided eye contact. Sensing the gravity, Daniel let out a trembling breath. I'm sorry it came to this. Paying her, it feels wrong. Anna nodded wearily. It is wrong, but we do what we have to, I suppose. Silence fell. Anna placed a hand on her belly, her thoughts swirling. She was relieved the immediate threat was contained, but heartbreak remained. The affair, Tessa's cruelty, the blackmail, it all left a permanent scar. Daniel began, hesitating. I want you to know none of this was worth it. If I could turn back time, I'd give anything to fix what I broke between us. Anna stared at the chandelier overhead. For a moment, she pictured the wedding day again, the promised forever. Then Tessa's face intruded, mocking her naivete. Daniel, she said softly, this doesn't magically erase what happened. Even if Tessa vanishes, the pain remains. I don't know if I can forgive you. He bowed his head. I understand. A long pause lingered. Anna finally mustered a flicker of compassion. What happens to us now? He looked at her with desperate hope. We try therapy. We rebuild trust, if you'll let me. I'm not asking for miracles, just a chance to prove. I'm not the man Tessa made me out to be. Please. Anna's throat constricted. She didn't answer immediately. She wanted to believe there was a path forward, especially for their child, but the wounds were too raw. I need time, she whispered. We'll see. Life settled into an uneasy routine. The immediate crisis with Tessa was resolved. Lawyers finalized the NDA and wire transfer. Robert's team verified the flash drive's contents before placing them in secure storage. For now, Tessa was gone, but the emotional wreckage remained. As the weeks passed, Anna tried to distance herself from the heartbreak. She attended prenatal checkups, focusing on the growing life inside her. Occasionally, Daniel accompanied her, offering quiet support, but Anna kept him at arm's length. Then, in a twist of fate that felt like cosmic retribution, Daniel's businesses took a series of hits unrelated to Tessa. A global economic downturn battered stock prices. A key investor withdrew from a major project at the last minute. Lawsuits unrelated to the scandal emerged, claiming patent infringements in one of Calhoun Industries' tech subsidiaries. It was a perfect storm, hitting Daniel from all sides. Anna watched as Daniel scrambled to keep the company afloat. Board members questioned his leadership. Rumors of the near scandal with Tessa spread quietly among a few insiders, eroding confidence further. Some whispered that Daniel had lost his edge, that he'd become too distracted by personal drama to steer the empire effectively. Despite the tension between them, Anna felt a pang of sympathy. She saw him come home late, eyes shadowed with exhaustion, the once confident swagger gone. But part of her also recognized this as a form of karma. He had betrayed his marriage, and now fate was punishing him in ways neither of them could have foreseen. One evening, as Daniel sat in his home office, staring at financial spreadsheets with despair, Anna entered quietly. She'd brought tea, a small gesture of peace. He glanced up, surprised. "Hey," he said, voice husky from sleepless nights. She offered a faint smile, placing the cup on his desk. "Chamomile. Thought you might need something calming." He sighed gratefully, taking a sip. "Thanks." Anna hesitated, unsure how to proceed. "I heard about the layoffs. That must be tough." He nodded, eyes clouded with guilt. "It is. I hate letting people go. But if we don't cut costs, the company could collapse entirely." A wave of compassion swept over Anna. Despite everything, she remembered the side of Daniel who cared about people, who believed in building a legacy that helped others. "Maybe there's another way," she offered gently. "I know we're not in the best place, but if you want someone to brainstorm with, I'm here." Daniel's gaze softened, gratitude flickering in his tired eyes. "I'd like that. I miss talking with you about anything really." Something in Anna's chest tightened. She missed it too. Days turned into hours of stiff politeness, overshadowed by the betrayal. Yet a thread of connection lingered. She pulled a chair closer, glancing over the reports. "Let's see if we can find a strategy that minimizes job losses. Maybe restructure some departments, explore new partnerships." They delved into discussions, analyzing numbers and possible solutions. It was oddly reminiscent of their early days, when they'd talk excitedly about Daniel's business ideas. But now, the air was heavy with unspoken regret. At midnight, they realized they'd spent hours together, forging a tentative truce. Anna rubbed her belly, feeling the baby shift. Daniel watched with a mix of awe and sorrow. He reached a hand out, then paused, unsure if he was allowed to rest it on her stomach. Anna swallowed hard, then nodded. As Daniel's palm met the gentle curve of her pregnancy, the baby kicked. They both smiled, an instinctive, genuine moment of shared wonder. For a fleeting second, the distance between them shrank, replaced by a quiet sense of possibility. In the following weeks, Anna continued to help Daniel with strategies to stabilize the company. She wasn't a business prodigy, but her intuition and attention to detail offered fresh perspectives that Daniel's executives appreciated. Together, they implemented cost-saving measures without severe layoffs, opting for temporary pay cuts at the executive level instead. Morale improved. Investors took note. Slowly the ship began to right itself. Meanwhile, Anna's due date inched closer. She spent hours reading about childbirth, attending prenatal classes, and preparing the nursery. Daniel accompanied her on more appointments, carefully treading the fragile line between them. Neither had declared a final decision on the marriage. Anna's hurt was still there, but so was a cautious sense of rebuilding. Alicia noticed the shift, dropping by with baby gifts and supportive words. Even Robert, the crisis manager, commented on how the atmosphere around Daniel had improved. Tessa remained silent, likely well settled with her 2 million. The ghost of her betrayal lingered, but it didn't overshadow daily life as it once had. Still, Anna wrestled with her conflicted emotions. She found Daniel's efforts to redeem himself sincere. He cut off all questionable social ties, gave her full access to his communications, and started therapy sessions, both individual and with Anna, when she was willing. But trust was a delicate plant, and the wound was deep. Late one night, as thunder rumbled across the city skyline, Anna felt the first sharp pangs of labor. She was in bed, trying to sleep, when a contraction ripped through her abdomen. She gasped, panic racing up her spine. Quickly she shook Daniel awake. His eyes flew open, instantly alert. "Is it time?" She nodded, breath hitching with pain. I think so." A rush of adrenaline hit them both. They grabbed the hospital bag, called Alicia, and sped through the rain-slicked streets to Mount Sinai Hospital. Nurses whisked Anna into a birthing suite, hooking her up to monitors. The baby's heartbeat filled the room with a rapid, comforting rhythm. Daniel stood by her side, holding her hand. She gritted her teeth through contractions, sweat beading her forehead. Fear mingled with excitement. This was the day they'd meet their child, a new life born from their turbulent union. Hours blurred into a haze of pain, pushing, tears. Daniel whispered encouragement, apologizing for every misstep, promising to be a better man, a better father. Anna focused on one singular goal: bring their baby safely into the world. Despite the heartbreak, the betrayal, in that moment, she was grateful Daniel was there. At dawn, a shrill cry filled the room. Their son emerged, small and wrinkled and perfect. The nurse placed him on Anna's chest, and she burst into tears, overwhelmed by love so powerful. It erased every other thought. Daniel, tears streaming down his face, leaned in to kiss the baby's tiny forehead. They named him Benjamin, a name Anna had loved since childhood. Holding Benjamin, Anna felt the universe shift, as if everything else paled in comparison. She caught Daniel's gaze, and for a moment, forgiveness seemed possible. Not guaranteed, but attainable someday. In the days after Benjamin's birth, Anna and Daniel remained at the hospital, absorbing the joys and challenges of new parenthood. Their families visited, showering them with love and congratulations. Alicia was particularly overjoyed, snapping endless photos of her nephew. Anna noticed a transformation in Daniel. He spent hours cradling Benjamin, talking softly to him about the world, about values and dreams. It was a side of him Anna hadn't seen in a long time, gentle, vulnerable, real. While the pain of betrayal still lingered, the sight of Daniel as a doting father softened something in her heart. When they finally brought Benjamin home, Anna stepped into the nursery with awe. It was a tranquil space, soft pastel walls, a crib adorned with plush animals, a glider by the window overlooking the city. She placed Benjamin in the crib, watching as he dozed off, oblivious to the storms that had raged before his arrival. Daniel hovered in the doorway, hesitant. "Anna?" She turned, tired but content. "Yes?" He swallowed hard. "I just wanted to say I'm grateful for letting me be here, for giving me a chance to show up for our son. I know it doesn't erase what I did, but I want you to know how deeply sorry I am." Anna felt emotion welling up. "I appreciate that, I do." She glanced at Benjamin's sleeping form. "He deserves both of us at our best." Daniel nodded, stepping into the room. He tentatively wrapped an arm around Anna's shoulder. She didn't pull away. Together, they watched their newborn son breathe in gentle little sighs. The future was uncertain, but in that shared moment of parenthood, they found a fragile promise of hope. Time passed. Benjamin grew, and so did the complexities of Anna and Daniel's relationship. Therapy sessions became a weekly routine. Anna unpacked the betrayal, Daniel confronted his flaws, and they tentatively rebuilt trust. It wasn't linear. There were arguments, setbacks, nights Anna slept in the guest room. But there were also breakthroughs, moments of genuine closeness that hinted at a stronger bond than before. Professionally, Daniel fought tooth and nail to restore Calhoun Industries. Bit by bit, the company stabilized, regaining investor confidence. Reports praised Daniel's resilience, attributing it to his renewed focus. Only Anna and a few others knew the personal cost behind that focus. Then came the final twist of karma, Tessa's downfall. News broke that she'd attempted a similar blackmail on Winston Mackey himself, trying to extort money by threatening to leak false secrets about Mackey's company. But Mackey had set a trap, collaborating with law enforcement. Tessa was arrested on charges of attempted extortion and fraud. The tabloids devoured the scandal, though they never mentioned Daniel or Anna thanks to the ironclad NDA. When Anna heard the news, she felt a weight lift. Tessa was finally facing the consequences of her actions. The chapter of fear was truly closing. A sense of poetic justice shimmered, as though the universe had balanced itself. By the time Benjamin celebrated his first birthday, Anna and Daniel found themselves in a more peaceful place. The affair and blackmail remained part of their history, an unerasable scar, but they had navigated through it together. Anna had witnessed Daniel's genuine remorse, his willingness to be better, and Daniel had discovered that true power, indeed, came from honesty, vulnerability, and respect. They threw a small birthday party at the penthouse, just family and close friends. Benjamin squealed with delight at the sight of balloons and cake, blissfully unaware of the drama that once threatened to tear his family apart. Anna caught Daniel's eye across the room, and he gave her a soft smile. She smiled back, a signal that while forgiveness wasn't absolute, love still had room to grow. Later that night, once everyone had gone and Benjamin was asleep, they stood on the balcony together, gazing at the shimmering cityscape. Daniel slipped a hand around her waist. "We've come a long way." Anna leaned into him, exhaling softly. "Yes, we have." They shared a quiet moment, each knowing the future remained unwritten. But for the first time in a long while, that uncertainty felt like possibility rather than dread. This story reminds us that trust can be torn apart in an instant and takes far longer to mend. Secrets, temptations, and betrayals don't just threaten our happiness, they challenge our very identity and the foundations we've built with those we love. When deception collides with loyalty, when ambition eclipses compassion, the fallout tests even the strongest bonds. Yet, amid the wreckage, hope can still find its way. Confronting our darkest mistakes, taking responsibility, and refusing to give in to blackmail or fear can lead to a path of redemption.